On today's show, we talk about food trucks, the romance, and unfortunately, the reality. And in our second headline, Personal Capital raises $50 million that they say they really don't need. Why would a company raise a bunch of money that they don't need? We're going to cover that today and much, much more on Money in the Morning. Live from my mom's half-finished basement in Detroit, Michigan, I'm Saul-Sehy from Stacking Benjamins.
I'm Bobby Rebell from the Financial Grown-Up Podcast.
And Bobby is high over Manhattan in her very grown-up kitchen. And together we do the show called Money in the Morning, where we go over not one, but two headlines ripped from the financial press. And we could read them like some shows do, but no. We go a little further than that. We actually talk about what they might mean. We define some terms. We apply a little experience. And we send you home with some big ideas you can use every day with your money. M1 Finance today is M1 Finance. What am I talking about, Bobby? That is so good. You can tell we do this live because Money in the Morning is brought to you by Tiller, personal finance spreadsheets without tedious data entry. Manage your money in a spreadsheet 10 times faster with Tiller, the only service that automatically updates Google Sheets and Excel with your daily spending, transactions, and balances. Here's the deal. You get some cool perks if you go through our link, stackingbenjamins.com/Tiller. I think they give you some free time anyway. They double it if you use our link, stackingbenjamins.com/Tiller. All right, Bobby, you ready to play with some headlines today?
Let's go for it.
It's going to be fun. We're talking food trucks. Are you hungry?
I'm so hungry.
Are you really?
Yes, I am actually. I've been running around all day. I'm hungry.
Well, let's get this started then.
Yes.
And now, your first Money in the Morning headline.
Our first headline comes to us from a place where one of us may have been from, called Reuters. Not sure I've ever heard of that, Bobby.
It is the best news company in the world, of course. Now, I have very fond memories of working at Reuters, and the author of this story actually is a friend of mine. So I'm excited. He always writes great stories, and I love to read them.
And that would be,
talk about his story.
Yeah, that would be Chris Taylor who wrote this piece, and it's the Your Money section of Reuters. And the piece is called "The Romance and Reality of Running a Food Truck." Do you eat much of it? Do you guys have a lot of food trucks in New York?
We do. And they've gotten more interesting and more innovative. They tend to be more niche focused than they used to be. So you get a lot of, specific, like this is the popcorn truck, or this is the truck that sells just this one type of ethnic food. So they're actually really upping their game, and they're finding ways to integrate them into city life in a different way. Sort of permanent little food trucks, if that makes sense.
Because I don't think when I think of New York, I think of Austin, I think of food trucks. I think of New York, I think of those little food stands like on the corner,
We have a lot of those as well, yes.
Food carts.
It's a mix. Yeah, carts. I guess a lot of them are carts in New York City, but I think of them as food trucks. Same idea, basically.
Yeah, I think it would apply. Well, let's apply it here. This is from New York. It says, anyone with a boring 9-to-5 job and some culinary talent has at some point probably dreamt of opening their own food truck. Just think of it, hitting the road, hanging out at music festivals, making delicious food, being your own boss. While running a food truck does involve all those things, it also means plenty of not so dreamy things like parking tickets, health permits, hefty payments to event operators, mechanical repairs, and sweaty hard work. That's what Jill Muskites learned on the road in Connecticut as one half of the team operating Hartford's The Way Station, spelled W-H-E-Y, very clever. With husband Josh, she's been making divine grilled cheese sandwiches on the go for almost 8 years. Along the way, the duo's garnered accolades like Best Food Truck in Hartford, Best Grilled Cheese in Connecticut, and Jill even became a champion on the popular TV show Chopped. Quote, "It's an exciting life, but you have to be willing to work hard because it's incredibly difficult," said Muskites, who now operates 3 mobile locations and 1 brick-and-mortar restaurant, Way Station-ery, in Middletown, Connecticut. It took the couple a full 3 years before they saw the operation as a viable standalone business. Many other would-be chefs harbor the same dream. There are now more than 4,000 food trucks rumbling around the nation, according to market research firm IBIS World. That means an annual growth rate of 7.3% over the last 5 years for an industry that brought in almost $1 billion in 2017. Revenue can vary wildly by product and location. On average, IBIS World found that wages will gobble up 38.7% and food purchases 39.7%. In terms of profit, you're going to be left with just 7.7%. If you're pulling in $200,000, for instance, that means you're making $15,400. So how can food truck dreamers drive their way to steady financial success? A few road-tested tips. The first one is do one thing and do it well. And I'm not going to go too much into these, Bobby, but we'll still list them. Do one thing and do it well is their first trick. Don't try to be everything to everybody. Make grilled cheese sandwiches and that's it. Number 2, start small with the truck. It says your natural instinct is going to be to buy the biggest, best food truck out there. And then next is be wary of events. It turns out that a lot of these operators at different events take advantage of food truck operators. And one of the quotes in here says that if you're giving away over 20% of your money or even 30%, you can't make any money. And then calculate all the costs, not just some. It says non-food costs are going to take you by surprise, like fuel, labor, insurance, permits, power usage, and parking all add up. For food trucks around LA and Orange County, they might be looking at 10 to 15 different business licenses and $1,700 just to obtain the right to start selling. So there's that. And then do we have another one? Nope, that's the last one.
That's a lot.
Yeah, I think there's so much here. Why don't we start off with the stuff that is for would-be side hustlers or entrepreneurs, because I think there's a lot to bite into for them.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that what happens is you as the owner would probably get sidetracked doing all of those ancillary things, and then you have to offload the actual operation. So you have this vision that you're going to do this so that you are cooking or doing something that's very joyful to you, interacting with your customers. But in fact, you end up outsourcing the actual business that you wanted to be doing, the activity you wanted to be doing. And in the end, you end up running around doing all these other things to keep the place running. And that's something a lot of entrepreneurs don't really understand that they might face.
Yeah, it makes sense to me that you would, look at as many mentors and publications. People have done this stuff before. And your advice that you just talked about, Bobby, points to this great book that everybody should read. I think whether you're going into business for yourself or not, called The E-Myth. And The E-Myth talks about this, about how people get so discouraged because they're so good at making, we'll say grilled cheese in this case. Mm-hmm. They're so good at making grilled cheese. And then all of a sudden they're not making grilled cheese because they have to deal with all this other stuff. There's a big difference between making the product and running the business.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And that's something people don't think about in advance. I also think what's a really good point of this is, don't buy the biggest truck right away. Start with something small. You don't want to be stretched because then your lifeline is going to be very, very short. I have one of my friend's sisters started a restaurant in New York City and it had a very short life because you know what? She had a runway of about 9 months, but she spent the first 6 months dealing with permits because she was selling food and there was all of these hoops to jump through with so much red tape in New York City that by the time she actually opened, she had such a short lifeline that she didn't make it. And that was so disappointing because her concept was so fantastic and it was heartbreaking.
They say that the amount of time you think it's going to take, you should always double it when you're an entrepreneur. And then the amount of money you think you're going to need, you should also double that, but probably quadruple the amount of money. And most people are completely underfunded. I like this idea at the bottom of picking your partners wisely. Like some of these festivals seem like they'd be great places to be, but if they're taking 30% of the money, you could be making grilled cheese all day and you're going to grilled cheese yourself out of business.
Well, absolutely. I mean, if your margin is 7%, how do you give away 20%?
Yeah.
You're literally you are almost guaranteed to lose money. So I wonder if you want to be at one of these food festivals, if you can actually go to them and maybe negotiate in some way and just explain that. And maybe they can work with you, or maybe you just don't do that. Maybe you just have to say no to those kinds of things and find different marketing. Yeah. I think it's good that they actually have resources like social media now, so people that like the truck can actually find where it is.
back to your sister and her issue and that ramp.
My friend's sister.
Or
But
your friend's sister.
just to be clear, my sister might be listening. She's not an entrepreneur.
She's like, no, not my restaurant.
No.
When you start off, I mean, anybody starting off with a side hustle, we've talked to our mutual friend, PT, who runs FinCon, about this. When he started, he works full-time as an entrepreneur now. He started a little bit at a time. And the other nice thing about starting part-time or starting small and not going with the biggest truck is that you can learn without it killing everything about what you have to do. Like if you decide to rip off the Band-Aid and quit your job immediately and go into entrepreneurship, there's just a ton at stake there.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. I mean, I became an entrepreneur after 3 years of planning, doing things on the side while still working at Reuters and figuring out where my income streams would be and getting clients so that I had an infrastructure already built by the time that I left. The other thing in this piece that it sort of reminds me of is when you're buying your first home, because you buy your first home and it used to be a generation ago, buy as much as you can, stretch so that because your family's going to grow into it and you'll buy furniture later and whatever. Now, I think we've come to a point where a lot of people have found it's actually better to buy smaller because there are going to be so many expenses you don't really see, whether it's mortgage closing costs, those kind of expenses just to get up and running into your house. And then all the household expenses that go beyond just being happy in your home. You think you're going to go mow the lawn yourself, but then things get out of hand and maybe there's a tree that needs to come down that needs a professional, or maybe you have to learn about different insurance that you didn't know you needed. Every time it snowed, when we had a house in the suburbs that we owned during the housing crisis, we had to pay for someone to plow this driveway of this empty house that was for sale.
Yeah.
So there's all these ancillary costs in home ownership. So it's better if you start small when you're making a big investment like that, just like with a business.
A lot of these costs that you would have never even thought about.
I couldn't believe it when I first discovered that, because I've always lived in apartments, that apparently not only do you have to get it plowed, but in some places they won't come unless you agree to come twice. So let them come twice and pay for them twice, because they don't want to have people kind of skimp out and have this huge pile of snow that damage their equipment. So they want to come early, get it cleared first, and then come again. And so you're in for a lot of money depending on what your contract says.
At one point, I hired lawn people. I was just way too busy and I couldn't do my lawn. I prefer to do my lawn myself so I can listen to podcasts. I absolutely love doing that. But I got so busy I couldn't do it, and I went to hire lawn people. And then I realized that maybe I could hire them like once every 3 weeks. And I knew my lawn was going to look a little bad that way, but I'd save a bunch of money. And the guy said the same thing you're talking about. He's like, oh, no, I know what you're trying to do. And my guys are going to be there so long because it's going to be so hard doing your lawn where the grass is that high that I'm going to lose my butt. Good.
Yeah.
Guys,
but you know what? You know how we can really save money is what I did growing up. My dad had us, we were out there raking leaves with him. That's what we would do in the fall. We'd clean up the leaves with him.
Free labor.
Family activity. You got twins. What were they doing growing up?
Free labor. No. Oh, absolutely. Same thing. I mean, my dad, I mean, to your point, Bobby, my dad was one of 16 kids because they had a fruit farm. And these weren't kids that were just, obviously, maybe not obviously, but they were a big Catholic family. But the kids then in farm country, that was free labor. I
just expected. It was just the way your family was.
You had 17 workers. We do this live in front of a Facebook audience, and Dylan is here and uses a term that I really like. Start with the minimum viable product before going in with expensive equipment. Eric Ries wrote a book, and I've got the name right here, guys. Maybe somebody at Facebook, or maybe Bobby, you remember. What's the Eric Ries big book? REIS.
I know exactly. It's on the tip of my tongue, but it's not coming out quite yet.
It's a super big book. And that's all that he talks about is seriously what Dylan's talking about. Figure out what the minimum viable product is that you can that you need. Go in and find out what the audience thinks of that. And then iterate based on what the audience likes and what they don't like, instead of creating a bunch of expensive stuff and then realize you missed the mark, because there's a good chance you're going to miss the mark.
Yeah, they talk about that in the piece, actually, that the people that try to be everything to everyone often don't succeed. But if you find a really narrow niche and become really good at it, that's usually the winning formula, whatever it may be.
Kathy, in our Facebook chat today. I'm having trouble talking. Says with regard to, all the markups and them taking so much money from these vendors, that's why a corn dog costs $20 at the fair. That is why it is. I mean, everybody wonders why the heck is fair food so expensive? They're trying to recoup some of that cost from the overhead of people. Here we go. Lori and Avanthia have it. Thank you. The lean startup. Startup.
Thank you.
Yes. Morales is here and says, starting small will also enable you to learn during the process what are the actual important aspects to focus on instead of throwing cash at all the unnecessary stuff. It's good stuff. Mike says, start small, slow and low, grow slow to keep overhead low. I like that. I think that's probably a good place for us to leave it. I had ahead of time had to come up with a takeaway for today, and it was running a business is a separate skill. You think you're getting into a food truck to do the food truck? You're getting into a food truck to run a business, and somebody else is probably going to do the actual food trucking, the stuff that the grilled cheese making.
Right. You're the owner.
Yeah. Owner and bookkeeper and hopefully product tester. Right. That's what I'd be.
Well, you should definitely pick a product that you like to eat.
If I had
because you're going to see a lot of that.
If I had a grilled cheese food truck, though, I'd weigh 750 pounds. And
me too. I like grilled cheese.
My cholesterol would be 9,857. Yeah. Let's move on to our second piece, which comes to us from financialplanning.com. And let me put this on the screen for the people who are hanging out with us here. Personal Capital. They're a big company. You use Personal Capital, Bobby?
I do not, but I'm hearing a lot of interesting things about it. I think it's definitely a company to keep an eye on. They're interesting right now.
Yeah. So for people who don't know Personal Capital, a lot of people use the free end of Personal Capital where you can put your portfolio on there, put your budget, you can put a lot of your personal life on there. It's a really clean interface. Nice to use. I know a lot of bloggers use Personal Capital, but then they also have these advisors who will call you and they manage money. And so they generally do it, I think, with individual stocks. But it's kind of half robo, half human when it comes to Personal Capital. But in the news, they just cleared $50 million, and it says it clears them for growth. And this is written by Suleiman Din. Personal Capital has received another financial boost from its deep-pocketed main investor, allowing the hybrid digital advice platform to expand its market reach and add more and even more advisors. The firm said it raised $50 million in Series F funding from Canadian investment giant IGM Financial, bringing its total funding over 9 rounds to more than $255 million. Personal Capital CEO Jay Shah said the additional funding was not out of need. Rather, quote, it's a signal of the powerful business we're building. We have an opportunity for this investment to vault ourselves forward, and it further underscores our mission to grow faster, he says. This is an expression of a vote of confidence in our model, our technology, our people. Digital wealth management is the direction of the industry. Shah added that the funding was based on an upward valuation of Personal Capital, but did not disclose the new valuation of the company. The hybrid now claims $8.5 billion in assets under management and 2 million registered users on its platform. Though its free financial planning tool, the digital wealth management startup claims it's tracking more than $650 billion in aggregated account value. With the new cash infusion, Shah says that the digital-first wealth manager will continue to fund an expansion of market reach and advisor growth. In addition to moving its new headquarters in Redmond City, California, Personal Capital in October opened up offices in Atlanta, adding to its locations in Denver, Chicago, Dallas, and New York. Shah says that the firm will add more certified financial planners and advisors licensed in Series 65 and Series 66 licenses. Currently, the firm employs 140 advisors. It's not a headcount growth goal. It's a broader distribution goal of what we're doing, he says. Part of that broader distribution could include serving clients outside of its recent mass affluent and high net worth focus, Shah says. Currently, the hybrid has account minimums of $100,000 and starting fees of 0.89%. It says 89 basis points here, but I'll explain. Basis points, it just means 0.89%. Though earlier, it offered services to clients with $25,000. Shah expressed confidence its clients will remain loyal, even as stock volatility rattles some investors. And then he talks about how they're able to help people build a plan and play the long game. Interesting piece, Bobby. You raised $50 million and you say that you didn't need it. It's just a sign of how fast we're growing, and it's a vote of confidence.
Well, I think that's important. I think that's also something that people should think about. This is sort of a big picture comment to begin with, but that you should always look for money when you don't necessarily need it. And we've talked previously about things like having a home equity line of credit or some things like that, so that you have that ability to access cash when you need it, because when you need it, maybe they're not going to want to lend it to you at the same rate. So I think it's always good to kind of have that extra, almost call it a business emergency fund, for lack of a better term. But that's sort of, to some degree, what they're having, because rates and borrowing terms are still very good right now. So I think that's sort of smart to kind of have your foundation very solid, because they are building the business aggressively and they don't want to ever be raising capital from a position of need rather than want.
That is what it feels like. It feels like this is an emergency fund.
Yeah, that they're raising when they're not in an emergency situation. But it's also a growth fund, so that they have the option to expand as they choose to be, in a thoughtful manner, and not a manner where it's sort of herky jerky. Well, if we get the funding, we can hire this many people, or if we can do this. And they also didn't focus on hiring a certain number of people. They focused on, what is our goal? Where do we want to take the business, rather than finite numbers of, we're going to hire exactly this many. They're going to do what needs to be done to achieve the goal. And that they are not putting in stone yet. They're leaving that fluid, so that they have some flexibility as the business evolves.
I was just going to say that it's the flexibility that you can have to be much more nimble as opportunities arise. I mean, and think about this on a personal level, guys. If you're somebody that has a bunch of credit card debt and every dollar spoken for, and a great opportunity comes along, you can't take advantage of it because you're so in the weeds with all this other stuff that there's no room for flexibility. So for them to have this money and not have to direct it right away, I think is a pretty powerful thing.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's interesting. It's also interesting how they're adapting their business. And that's something that we're seeing in the industry in general. A lot of the companies that start out as robo-advisors really are starting to add more of a human element, because that is ultimately where they must see the growth. And that sort of says something about what we really want. As much as we want things to be automated, and certain things like bill paying should absolutely be automated, at the end of the day, we have human tendencies when it comes to investing. And sometimes when you get nervous, you do want to be able to pick up the phone or know that there's a human involved somewhere along the chain.
I think that's a big thing, because we saw all these robo-advisors, and certainly Personal Capital has never called themselves a full-fledged robo-advisor. But you look at how much of this money is going to go into new certified financial planners. Mm-hmm. More on the human side, not the technology side, but the human side of this digital hybrid. And then you look at other robos like Betterment moving more toward the advisory track, Wealthfront with the new products that they've offered that make them more of a money manager, like all these companies that said that they were going to disrupt on the side in favor of automation are turning toward the humans that were actually, financial advisors have always made sure that they make money so they stay in business. And you see these people being disruptive, all of a sudden going, maybe we don't need to be so disruptive. Maybe we should be more like them. And my hope,
Joe, because so some of our audience may not know this, but I am a certified financial planner. So I do come to this from a certain perspective, but I do think that there is a new appreciation for people like certified financial planners. And also it is important when people deal with whatever it is, advisors of whatever type, that they understand whether they are dealing with a salesperson or someone like a CFP who has fiduciary responsibilities. And that's a big difference. And I hope that as people move from robo-advisors into having some kind of a hybrid model where there's human involved, they at least understand who they're talking to.
Yeah, if they're taking on more people in that area, they clearly have the data that shows them that people are looking for a human touch.
Absolutely. Yes, I agree completely.
They have to. Let's see what our friends are talking about that are hanging out with us on Facebook Live. By the way, if you want to hang out with us, it's facebook.com/iStackBenjamins on our sister show, Stacking Benjamins Facebook page. They're talking about how people at Personal Capital call. When you set up a Personal Capital account, they often call And Avanthia says they won't stop calling. And Dylan says they'll start calling after you've 100,000 tracked by them. And if you simply ask them to stop calling, they will. So that's good to know. Tom, who's here from the Maple Money podcast, hanging out with us today, he says, I'm hoping that all Canadian funding will lead to personal capital finally being available in Canada. So weird that their number one investor is Canadian and you can't get it in Canada. Dylan says that personal capital is a great way to track your investments across multiple accounts. By the way, we have no relationship with, they don't sponsor the show. If they want to, just call us Personal Capital. We can talk, but they don't. Vanthia loves their free tracking services as well. I
feel like I got to try them.
Yeah. Yeah. It from all accounts, I've been very happy with how I track my money. So I've never gone over there. I went there once for a piece I was writing just to check it out. And I only used it for a short time, but it's a great interface. Kathy says, sounds like a very responsible owner. You can downscale that for your food cart and you'd be all set. It's interesting. Dylan says 140 advisors across that many clients seems quite thin. For 0.89%, I'd expect more time commitment. That is interesting, Dylan, because you divide the number of clients they have. Those advisors are working their butt off. So looking at the amount of time, but that also shows you what type of advisor they are. They're not, and I don't think they've ever claimed to be like a full-fledged in your corner advisor, like somebody who's going to sit across a table from you. They're going to be more somebody who's on the phone answering some questions, maybe checking some boxes to make sure that you've done some of the basic stuff. But really, I feel like for personal capital, the CFPs help them gather more assets. That really is their job, is to help them gather more assets. And you're correct for 0.89. It's funny, back in the day, Bobby.
That's kind of a lot.
Well, 0.89, that was what I was about to say. 0.89 didn't used to feel like a lot. I didn't think it was a lot. And certainly a bunch of, human advisors charge 1%. Some charge 2%. 2% I think is pretty outrageous. 1% though, if somebody's doing a lot for you sitting across the table, it's all about what you get. I can see that. But for a company that's mostly digital and I'm not plugged into a person all that often, 0.89 does sound expensive. I think we're going to leave it there. We got some people guessing what our big idea is for today, Bobby.
I know. I see some good guesses there.
It is pretty fun to see. And we're going to tell you what the big idea is in just a second. We were talking about food trucks earlier and talking about maybe starting off small and getting your budget together, knowing where the expenses are. I know a company, Bobby, that helps people do that.
Tiller. Tiller does that.
Isn't that the best transition of all time?
It is. What a great transition. No, but they also have a great interface.
They do have a great interface, and that's because when it comes to your money tracking with Tiller, you can track it however you want. You know why? Because all it is in the background really is either an Excel or a Google spreadsheet. And I know the second I say the word spreadsheet, there's a bunch of people like me who go, oh man, I can't do that. There is no way that I can do a spreadsheet. I don't want to deal with formulas. You don't have to. They have a bunch of templates that are already formed, some of them in partnership with some great names in personal finance. People like Carl Richards, as an example, is one. A great guy. I don't know. Do you read Carl's column?
I don't. I'm sorry.
Carl's got a great...
Way to put me on the spot there, Joe.
Thanks. Nice job. Well, I do. 50% of the people on the show read Carl's stuff.
All right, I'm going to get on that.
So when it comes to this, though, it keeps it very, very simple. And you know what? If there's something that you don't like, because it's a spreadsheet, it's very easy to change it, tweak it to be the way you want it to be. So you can manage your money 10 times faster with Tiller, and it automatically updates all your transactions, your portfolio, everything very quickly. To get there, head to stackingbenjamins.com/Tiller, Tiller. And if you end up buying Tiller, when you go there to kick the tires, they send us a thank you for sending you their way. So thanks for keeping us podcasting by using our link if you decide that Tiller's for you. All right, time for the big idea. Dylan's got...
We do have some guesses. We have some guesses out there, Joe.
Dylan's got one that says, Joe will taste test your food truck for 0.89%.
Mike's in there. I see Mike has one.
Yeah, but I like that one. I want to dwell on me tasting food for 0.89%. Mike says correlation for emergency fund for food trucks and startups and fintech and all businesses. Got to have enough money to stay in business and know your business model. Have lower overhead. And let's see. I'm going to try to scroll down very quickly. Hard to do this in real time. Do you see another one we should?
I've been trying to do this recently.
Fo-
It's very challenging. Let me see if I see any others.
I do not.
That's it for the big idea guesses. We have a lot of comments for other stuff, but that's it for the big idea.
Our takeaway for piece number 2, by the way, the future of advice still seems to be human. All the robo still going toward humanity. That was a pretty obvious takeaway. But I think that I think Mike nailed it.
Yeah,
He
did actually.
I have a friend, and we'll leave everybody with this big idea. I have a friend who is an engineer, and she builds highways. That's her job, and repairs highways. And when they're building or repairing a highway, she told me the first thing they do is they look at everything that could go wrong, and they eliminate in their head all of those possibilities. And it's amazing when you look at people with their personal financial picture and things go wrong. A lot of these things could have been prevented if they would have just done that same checklist. Think about all the things that could go wrong and get rid of those possibilities. And when you take a look at the food truck owners and the things that they do, the successful ones, they're interested in running a business, not necessarily just making grilled cheese. They understand how their cost layout are happening. And they also know the weird things like the human costs that come in, people not showing up to work, the cost of permits, the cost of their partnerships, so they can make the right partnerships. They've got the right budget so that they can create the right amount of food and at the right price. Same thing for personal capital, $50 million going to help them grow. But this is flexible money that they can use for when all those unexpected things happen. And I think that, Bobby, is our big idea today.
I think that was very well said, Joe.
Thanks, Mom. I think we're about done for today. Everybody, well, I'll do mine last. Bobby?
All right. If you want to live a rich life, you got to be a financial grown-up, people.
Go stack some Benjamins, everybody. We'll see you back here next time at Money in the Morning.
Bye.
This show is created by Joe Saul-Sehy, hosted and produced by Bobby Rebell and Joe Saul-Sehy, is engineered by Caden Thompson, and all put together by a pack of well-trained ferrets down here in Joe's mom's basement. You'll find Bobby at the Financial Grown-Up Podcast and Joe at the Stacking Benjamin Show. Go say hi to them there, too. Online, visit us on Twitter at Average Joe Money and at Bobby Rebell, or come join a live recording at our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/iStackBenjamins. I know you already know this too, but Money in the Morning is for entertainment purposes only. You should not act on anything recommended by a bunch of entertainers in a basement or even a Manhattan kitchen without first consulting your financial advisor. And second, dude, have your head examined. Have headlines you'd like us to discuss? Send them to joe@stackingbenjamins.com or put them on our Stacking Benjamins closed Facebook group. This show is a collaboration of Stacking Benjamins LLC and BRK Media LLC. Copyright 2019. All rights reserved. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor Doug, and I reserve the right to always say, we'll see you next time back here on Money in the Morning.